Now, Tampa Bay, I think a lot of people were shocked, capital S, shocked, when the trade for them to get Tanner Jeannot from Nashville. And that's exactly the type of guy they've added at the deadline, right? Nick Paul and Brandon Hagel, and go back to the Blake Coleman and those types of guys that they were getting. It's always that kind of middle six guy that adds a little bit of grit and all that stuff. Okay, I get it. But the price was high. It's a first-round pick. It's a second-round pick. It's a third-round pick, a fourth, a fifth, and Cal Foote. The gang at Cap Friendly said, Julien, that they believe this is the first trade that they could ever find in which a team gave away a first, second, third, fourth, and fifth in the same trade. Here's what's interesting. As we record this podcast on Monday afternoon, Julien BriseBois,
I was about to say,
the general manager of the Tampa Bay Lightning, has given his side of things here, the explanation. And he says, quote, "When we look at what it's worth to us based on the odds of those draft picks turning into good NHL players down the road, I'd rather have the good player right now for this season and next and help this group win right now, because I know what the odds are of those picks turning into players. I also know the odds are of what those picks are turning into players that can help us win while we have this group of players right now in their prime, ready to go for another long run." Basically, Julien BriseBois saying, I owe it to the Hedman, Stamkos, Kuch, Vasilevsky, Sergachev group. I owe it to them to win now.
Yeah,
that's his rationale.
I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem with him doing what he needs to do to ensure that core stays up and they remain competitive every single year, especially when you have the list of players they have playing at such a high level. I don't have a problem with that. And on top of that, especially not to this extent, but yes, fine. He's made moves for guys like a Blake Coleman or Brandon Hagel at the or Nick Paul, and you offer up those high end draft picks, and it works. You can't really fault for Julien BriseBois for doing it again when it's worked for him in the past. My whole thing is just on the surface. When you look at it from a standpoint of, an NHL GM doing this to like NBA trades, and so many people are looking at this and saying like, man, this is an NBA trade where teams are starting to really look down the line with some of their future picks and say like, you know what, let's chuck them away so we can get this good player right now. It is just kind of interesting that like in the NHL we have, Julien BriseBois is doing this to get a third line player essentially, because that's what Tanner Jeannot is going to be with the Tampa Bay Lightning, compared to the NBA where like, okay, maybe you get Russell Westbrook out of it. And look, Russell Westbrook is washed compared to what we've seen him at his MVP form. But like, if you're flipping picks to get him, like, okay, like there's a star you're getting in, or Kevin Durant, for example. It's just, that's what I find the most interesting thing about it. I'm not going to sit here and doubt Julien BriseBois for what he did. My thing is just like, for people who are going to say like, yeah, this is an NBA style trade. Like, yeah, we're starting to see GMs get creative. Like, this is kind of a really interesting trade to kind of hoist up in the air and be like, hey, GMs are getting creative and saying, screw these draft picks down the line. I don't have a problem with BriseBois saying that, you know what, essentially saying that, you know what, I'm going to make sure this core is happy and that they can compete every year. It's just, man, like Tanner Jeannot, like he better be worth it for all those picks. That being said too, that first round pick he gives from 2025 is lottery protected. So if the Lightning, for example, just fall off a cliff that year as they're trying to be competitive, at least they could have that going for them. It's just, man, that's a lot for a guy who's an RFA at the end of the year. He's getting paid under $1 million. Is going to, again, just play on your third line. But hey, if it works, it works.